about the first time I experienced meeting the Moran brothers. I was just 11 years old, just a little guy, and I was racing at Saddleback Park. They used to have a sort of a TT motocross racetrack for minis. And I was new to the sport. I just wanted to race. I got a mini enduro stock, and I wasn't very good. I just was learning how to race, and I didn't have really much support from my family. And I begged my mom to give me some entrance fee and drop me off at Saddleback. I was all alone at racing. And I turned over and saw the Moran brothers next to me. And they had their papa, Mr. Moran, and he was always working on the bikes. And then I saw Kelly and Sean with the beautiful green and white leathers with the clovers on the sleeves. And they looked like $1 million. And I looked down at myself and I just had Levi's and a race shirt. And it didn't really matter to me because I wanted to race, and racing was all that really mattered to me. But the Moran brothers looked really good, and they were really sharp dressed in their beautiful leathers. That's the first time I saw leathers on a child. And they were about my age, and so I was really kind of impressed by them, and I said, these guys are gonna go far. And I guess they tried motocross, and they didn't like it because they like to slide. They didn't like the jumps. And as you know, the Moran brothers are excellent sliders. Advanced from the minis, and then I went ahead and was working hard to earn money for a Speedway bike. And I finally got my Speedway bike and started to race. And I didn't really see the Moran brothers, but suddenly the Moran brothers popped on the scene as they turned 16 years old with the big bikes. And of course they were good, and they progressed really fast. And I remember one day when I was my second year racing, actually it was my first full year, and I started at the tail end in August the year before when I was 16. So it was my first year. I advanced to first division. And I remember one night I really didn't want to race. I was very tired. And I get to the pits and I just wanted to go to the stands. And I look over and there's these nice vans. And inside one of the vans, Kelly Moran and Sean, they popped out of the van. And I always remember Kelly, he was smoking cigarettes. And I was thinking, God, he's so young, to be smoking. And it could really affect his health, which later, that's the cause of his passing, was his smoking. But I always remember him smoking, and he was always kind of intimidating for such a little guy because he was so good. And I remember I just didn't want to race that night. And that's when I just was getting put into first division. And I just remember that night was a good night for me. I advanced to the handicap main event. I was a low yardage rider at the time. And I had the Moran brothers and I had Bruce Penhall in my race, the dream team for the main event. And I just knew that I had to go fast because these guys were good. And I just gave it all I had. And it was a 6-lapper. And I just remember Penhall on my back for like 3 laps, riding me hard. And Kelly, I don't know what happened to him. I never saw him. He was back there somewhere. But I ended up pulling that victory off. And I was like, I had a good race. And I barely squeaked by Penhall and beat the Moran brothers. So that was really, gave me a boost of my racing. And then later on, later that year, the next year, I was racing over the Santa Ana track at the Eddie West Field. And I was racing with Mike Bass, scratch racing, and with Kelly Moran. And that was a track that I did really well. So I was really excited to race these guys and to hopefully beat them. And right before the race started, my bike went bad. I don't know what happened, but the bike wouldn't start. I couldn't get my JAP to start. And that was the bike I was really used to. And I just was kind of upset because I really wanted to race these guys. And I just remember going over to Ken Maley and talking to Ken, and I said, Ken, do you know anyone that will let me borrow their bike for this race? And Ken said, I have a Maley bike for you. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, you can race it against Kelly and against Mike Bass. I said, sure. So I went ahead and I raced it, and the bike just was weird. I couldn't ride that thing. I don't know. I was not used to it. The gearing was off. Everything was off. And I remember going into like turn 3 and 4 and just turning it really weird. I have a photo of it here I could show you. And I just was so embarrassed I couldn't ride that Maley bike. And I wanted to beat those guys so bad. And I just had no chance on that bike. And that was just really like a bummer, not being able to race these guys with my bike, because I'm really used to riding my bike, and that Maley bike was not any good. I really badmouthed that bike after I raced it, but that was kind of one of the only times I remember racing Kelly. And then they ended up going over to Europe, and they all kind of formed the dream team. Scott Autry was over there, and then Penhall went, and Ron Preston went, the Moran brothers went. I mean, all the dream team riders went. I ended up stopping racing, sad to say. I went to college and stopped my Speedway career. But these guys went on to glory. They went on to race in the World Championships. Bruce Penhall, as everyone knows, won 2 World Championships in 81 and 82. And Kelly, I think he was 2 or 3 times in fourth place, just off the podium in World Championship, which is really incredible. And then you had the brother Sean winning a long track World Championship, which was amazing. And then you had like the dream team came together. It was like in 82, 81, 82, I think it was. And then that was the year, I believe 82 was when Denny Pyatt passed away on the racetrack at Hackney, I believe. And they went ahead and dedicated that team World Championship to Denny Pyatt. And the American team, I believe, was at White City in London. And they won that World Championship as a team. And the United States team was just amazing. And I kind of regret that I stopped racing, and I was not like trying to be a part of that, because these guys were sort of legendary, and to this day people idolize that team. It's very special, and America has never really had a team like that ever since. That was one of the strongest teams in American history, and nowadays it's not strong at all compared to those days. But those guys were just amazing riders. And I remember racing against Penhall and just thinking, God, this guy is so impossible to beat. He's so fast. And he's such a great racer. And, when I've raced him about 4 or 5 times that year, I just gave it everything I had. And after every race, I was totally exhausted, because Bruce was just so fast. He was so good before he went to England. And he was so good in England as well. So he was a hard guy to beat, and I realized that I had to step up my game to compete against him, because he was so fast. But it was just an amazing group of racers. And then when they came home, mostly in like 82, of course Kelly and Sean stayed for a few more years and raced in England. They had this really great career in England, as in the British League. They had a good point average, and they were just like top level riders, and they just were very famous. And Kelly was a very special guy, because he was such a free spirit. He partied a lot, he had a good time, and he just didn't really care about a lot of things. And a couple times after the races, little kids would come up to him and look at his trophies. He had won different championships and things. And Kelly would say to the kids, do you like that trophy? And the kids would say, yeah. And Kelly would say, just take that trophy home and go enjoy it. I never was like that. I got some of my trophies right up here. I never gave my trophies away. But Kelly was a very sweet guy. He didn't seem to care. And he just was just a good-hearted person, and he loved everybody that he met. And that's a really special quality, to be able to be kind and be good and to love everyone. That's really, really a special quality. And they both, all three of those guys, in fact, the whole team mostly came home. Bruce Penhall ended up winning a United States Speedway Championship along with Kelly and Sean in the 80s. And they just were fantastic racers. And it just was an honor to race these guys and to see how good of racers they were. And in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about my experience in getting to know Kelly and his sad ending, and just kind of like my feeling of what was going on in Kelly's life before he passed away, as I got to know Kelly pretty well at the races when I was racing before his passing. And I will tell you more about that, but that's the story of the early days of Kelly, Sean Moran, and racing Penhall. These guys were all fantastic racers, champions, and it was kind of an honor to just kind of go and compete against these superstars. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to have another show talk about Kelly Moran, the Jelly Man, the Wizard of Balance. And thank you so much for joining today. Please subscribe, like the show if you like it and you want to subscribe, and we're going to have more Speedway shows. But thanks once again, and we're going to see you, of course, we're going to see you next time.